How's everyone doing? This is Indiana here with Emptoraudio. Today I'm looking at the Fosi V3. Now Fosi did send this to me. We're doing a review for Home Theater Hi-Fi on this new amp. This is kind of an interesting amp here because Fosi didn't just, make a new amp and, throw it on Amazon, you're good to go. Now, they actually made this amp with quite a bit of feedback from the audio community. I heard they did a lot of, question and answers, did a couple, get some discussions going with a lot of other, hi-fi guys. And they really said, hey, what can we do to make an awesome, Class D, very powerful desktop amp? And this is what they came up with. And this thing is pretty sweet. So for under $100, I gotta say right off the bat, this is the best amp I've heard for under $100. And for overall desktop amps, it's definitely within my top 5. I've been listening to this thing for about 3 or 4 days now, and this thing is dead quiet. It's got an insane amount of power. I mean, check out the power brick for this thing. It's like the same size, and this is a smaller power brick. You can actually get the larger, I think it's the 48 volt power brick for this thing, and it looks like an Xbox 360 power brick. You're seeing those things are massive. But even this thing is like pretty big. It's quite a lot of power there. There's a few things to note with this. Not super common on a lot of these amps is going to be, we've got venting on the bottom, venting on the top, and we also have a interchangeable volume knob as well too. This thing just pops right off, pops back on. It came with the black one, and then they've got this kind of like a, in the photos it looks a little bit orangish, but in reality it's more of like a lighter bronze, I guess you could say. I really like the look of that bronze, so I swapped out to the bronze one, and I'm just going to keep it at that. I think it looks fantastic. On the back here, pretty standard layout. It's really trying to be as compact as possible. You can definitely tell by the design here. We've got just the speaker binding post. Your only input is going to be RCA, so of course you're going to want to have a nice standalone DAC to go along with it. I'm just using the SMSL DO300. That's kind of become like my reference DAC now. It's one of those DACs where I just can't find anything wrong with it, and it just sounds so good for the price. Other than that, you got your power supply here, and you do have a pre-out. You could run another amp off of this, but I'm sure you're probably just going to use it for a sub out, which is pretty much what 99% of people are going to use it for, is just a standard issue sub out there. So no big deal. I will say when it comes to just this amp, it's such a nice amp for just putting just sound quality above a lot of other things you could do. When I go to audio shows a lot, and you see like $100,000 room, and they got all this cool science stuff. They're claiming like, oh, we got this feature, we spent $100,000 on researching this aspect of the gear, and you go sit down, you listen to it, you're like, that just sounds okay. But then you go to that little room that's, kind of downstairs, and they're like, yeah, this is about a $10,000 setup here. And it's just like, whoa, this sounds amazing. This is kind of what that amp is to an audio show there. It's just one of those amps that just sounds fantastic, and you don't expect it from such an affordable little amp. They really put a lot of work into this. Looking at all the chipsets in here, they did some stuff like, you can interchange the op amps in here and things like that. That's cool and all, if you want to get into doing stuff like that. It's not really my cup of tea there exactly for changing out stuff on the inside there. I like to take a lot of just gear as face value. When it comes to like tube amps, you can always swap out different tubes. I just say whatever they recommend, the manufacturer recommends, that's just what I'm going to use for most tube amps. Listening thoughts though, this thing is just incredible. They do use for the volume control here, the potentiometer. It's going to be, of course, this is your only power on and off is going to be right here. But when you raise the volume up, it's a very smooth, I forget the exact name that they use for it. It's not a stepping, and it's more of like a linear, but it's a very smooth linear. So you're not really, cranking it up a ton to really raise that volume, but it's really bringing up with that nice smooth curve, but not getting you any jumpy kind of, rough steps up there. It's hard to find anything on this amp that is like, oh yeah, they kind of cheaped out there exactly. The only thing that I will say that I wish was a little bit higher quality was the binding post, but of course it's such a compact little unit. That's why they're so small and so compact there. So that kind of makes sense there. But other than that, this is the best sounding amp I've heard that is under $100. when you get under $100, you get to a lot of cheap components and stuff, and it's such a hit or miss. You're just kind of just gambling when you buy an amp under $100. There's some really good ones out there. There's some really bad ones out there. There's just kind of a ton that are just like, it just sounds okay. There's nothing really special to it. But plugging this thing in, the first thing that I noticed was the bass response. And of course, there's no EQ controls on the front of this thing at all. I just noticed significantly more bass out of my speakers. Not like, in a bad way, like just a ton of bass, but I felt like it really kind of made a lot of things come alive more. And you could say that I've been using a lot of like the Shite Wrecker, which that thing is only like 2 watts, of course. And when you claim, when you get into claiming the amount of power you have in an amp, that can get a little tricky there. People are like, oh yeah, more power is always better. You get more response and everything. That's kind of a slippery slope there, exactly. But this thing just has so much power to it. I mean, I feel like the treble, the mids, the bass, everything just comes right alive with this little amp. Where you normally hear that in amps that are going to run you $400, $500, $600, $700, this thing is doing it for under $100, and it's just absolutely incredible. It does lack a little bit of warmth that you're going to get out of like a Class A/B amp. That's to be expected of a Class D amp. Is it that noticeable? I mean, it took me a couple hours of listening to really pick some differences between that and the Riccar. But I honestly, I like this better than the Riccar, actually. It's cheaper, puts out a lot more power, it runs cooler. I definitely like the volume control on here. I don't need a pre-out, of course. That's not that big of a deal, but it's just a nice all-in-one unit, and it's hard to not recommend this. This is one of the best sounding amps I've heard in doing this for years and years in reviews. For under $100, yeah, this thing is really incredible. I do encourage you to definitely check out Audio Science Review. They did a review on this. They do kind of like the reviews that are in the opposite of what I do. They do a lot of the measurements. I love reading their reviews. I definitely respect those guys over there. They do some amazing reviews where they definitely measure all the inputs, outputs. Definitely worth checking that out. I'll leave a link in the description. I want to check that out as well. It's not something that I'm really interested in taking measurements of amps and preamps and stuff and DACs, but I always enjoy reading those, definitely to see the science behind a lot of the gear. It's always worth considering, of course. But at the end of the day, personally, I don't care if the unit's $100,000 or $1,000. How does it sound? That's kind of the principle that I live by with audio gear. You can tell me all these fancy terms and all the fancy gear you put into the unit, but at the end of the day, does it sound good? Yes or no? That's what matters to me. So does this sound good? Yes, this thing sounds good. And as a bonus, it's under $100. So it's one of the best amps I have definitely heard to date. Definitely worth checking out. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description for an Amazon link. It's not affiliated link or anything. It's just, if you want to check it out, there you go. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed the review, and this is an awesome unit, guys. Take care.